going on, everyone? Welcome to a Thursday edition of Back Your Play with Q. I'm your host, Rich Quinones. We are brought to you by Play It Again Sports in Denver, New Jersey, and also Fresh Roasted Coffee. Go to freshroastedcoffee.com, enter in the promo code Back Your Play, 20% off your first purchase. As everyone knows, we love our cafe on BYP. We don't need any more energy, but we have a little juice in the building. Joining us, our good friend Jonathan Marshall, our resident NBA hoops insider, sports reporter, anchor at WMUR. And he knows I'm feeling a little giddy today because not only did the Knicks dispatch your Philadelphia 76ers, but now all of a sudden up 2-0, second round series against Indiana, perhaps on a collision course if everything plays to form against the Boston Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals. But we'll get into that in a moment. Always good to talk with you, my friend. All right, so let's get into the Knicks, right? 2-0 right now. I guess we can talk about Rick Carlisle afterwards, the bag of tissues, the Kleenexes. We can talk about the 78 calls, the no calls that they're going to file this grievance, the pool report. We can talk about all that. But I will say this, Indiana can cry all they want. Pick up your defense, man. You allowed New York to shoot 68% in the second half in game one, 67% in the third quarter of game two. And that's a banged up Knicks squad. But yet these perimeter shooters and Brunson were running free and going to the rack. So defensively, the Pacers need to clean it up. When you hear 78 calls, no calls in MSG, home cooking, here we go. But, I mean, right now, Pacers down 0-2. Give me your synopsis of the first two games.
Yeah, I mean, the reality of it is the Pacers haven't been known for the defense all year anyway, right? So this was a thing when you look at it, Jalen Brunson was going to easily be able to get his game off. There's no surprise here. TJ McConnell, like whoever you put on him, like it's going to be easy compared to what he faced against the Sixers. I think after going through that series against Philly, I think the Knicks have to look at this series as like sort of like not a gimme, but not as tough compared to facing a Joel Embiid and a Tyrese Maxey, right? Going through that battle, the Philly gauntlet. I think this series to them is like, we're the better team. We're going to win this series. And they have that confidence right now. I think Jalen Brunson, to me, this matchup honestly comes down between Jalen Brunson versus Tyrese Halliburton. And this matchup, Jalen Brunson is getting the best in that matchup. Halliburton had a better game last night, but Brunson, pound for pound, I think should have his way in this series if he stays healthy. Now, you talk about OG's injury. We'll see what part that plays. Mitchell Robinson is out. We talked about it before we recorded. I think Indiana still has a chance. We'll see what they do in game three, but this series is far from over.
No, it is. And listen, we can talk about some of the calls. I mean, you go back Hartstein last night, who's just quietly put together a really nice multiple series in game last night near the triple-double. It wasn't a double dribble. I mean, so again, you have to have the correct call. You want to go to the kickball in game one. You want to go to some possessions. We saw it late even in the Sixers series. It's the NBA. I understand what Rick Carlisle was doing. Rick Carlisle was saying, look, we have to go back home for two every other day, every other day, I should say. And I'm getting it on the record just so if it is a close game, come the fourth quarter, see how things shake out and play, maybe all of a sudden we get a call to go our way. And that's the NBA. It's been that way since the dawn of day, since Naismith invented the game, right? So we saw it in the 80s, we saw it in the 90s. I think I mentioned on the show, I reverted back to 88, Detroit against the Lakers, Game 7, NBA Finals. Everyone's talking about Lambeer, the foul on Kareem, and everyone knows, hey, man, that wasn't a foul. We didn't call it because you fouled him. That was a call leading up to every other call you got in the series, right? And Kareem sinks the two, and then there you go. So, but Brunson compromised, right? OG injured, Robinson out, no Randall. The role players, I just love the energy, whether it's Precious, whether it's DiVincenzo, whether it's Hart, like your 60-minute man. I mean, the grit and the energy. And every time Indiana made that run, and they did, to their credit, you have to just give them their flowers in that regard. They took some shots and the Knicks were able to figure out a way to just start creating a little more distance, a lot more spacing on the floor. The one thing that concerns me a little bit too is even in these close games, even if you're up 3, 4, 5, 6, you don't need to rush some of these shots. I know I'm nitpicking, but DiVincenzo last night, uncalled for to take that three. But the Nova boys, the Nova Knicks, the cardiac Knicks, it's just when you look what they're doing from top to bottom. Like last night had that great feel And I love the fact that, Reggie Miller, shut up. You were 7-27 in your friggin' career at Madison Square Garden. And I'm glad they told him to F off. Last night was that 90s feel. And that
Yeah.
90s squad, those teams for that decade in the late
Yeah.
80s to the late 90s, they were dreaded.
Hmm.
Fans hated them. The
Hmm.
NBA loved it because of the ratings with the Miamis and the Indianas and the Bulls. But it was just those are our dogs, but everyone
Right.
hated that team. This Knicks team has grit, but they are
Hmm.
very likable, to be quite honest with you, man. I mean, I'm sure you're a
Yeah.
diehard Sixers fan.
Oh
You got
yeah.
to be
Oh
saying
yeah.
to yourself that that's rough for me to kind of
Oh yeah.
hit that.
No, it's true. Like out of all the years, I have loved to give you a hard time about the Knicks. This year's team, I don't have like any bad things to say about this team, right? Because they have a point guard in Jalen Brunson who you have to respect where he's come from. Second
Star.
round pick, was underrated, overlooked. People thought he was overpaid, and he's risen
Yep.
above all those doubters, right? To become the the star for the Knicks right now, right? And then a guy like Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo, like
DiVincenzo, they thought they
yeah,
overpaid for.
exactly. Isaiah Hartenstein taking advantage of his opportunity. He's going to get paid. I'm not sure if he's a free agent this year, but he's going to get paid based off
Yeah.
what he's done this postseason, as he should, right? And so you look at these guys. This is a likable Knicks team, and they're likable because they have had to sort of get it out of the mud, so to speak, right? And the way that they play, talking about the Sixers on the flip side, the anti-Knicks the Sixers have
Mhm.
been, right? Not hustling, not being mentally engaged and
That's
going all
exactly
out,
it.
right? And so watching it as a Sixers fan, me and my brother have talked about, look, we need guys like that. This is the guys that we need for this
Yeah.
team if we want to compete for a championship. The Knicks, they have guys who are special in their roles. Now,
Yeah.
they've had to play up, to be honest, Josh Hart and DiVincenzo, they're being miscast right now because they have to. They have to play up, but they've stepped up to the occasion. I think there's something to be said about these Nova Knicks. They have that chemistry already. When you're out there with guys that you've been friends with for so long, it makes things much more easier, right? You have that comfort level. And so I think that goes into it as well, having that chemistry, that Villanova chemistry, that champion. You've been through the wars, you've won championships. And so you know what each other is about. And that chemistry, that confidence is already there. And so I think that's a special thing too. So it's fun to watch.
Yeah, they got great balance scoring last night. I mean, you think about the starters, all of them, 14 or more points, three of them, 20 or more points, and you can really made a case you could
Mhm.
have three 30-point scorers. That was the balance attack last night. OG goes out, obviously. Hartstein had the big effort. Brunson turned it on late. Hart, 48 minutes. DiVincenzo, 48 minutes. The Knicks are shooting 46% from beyond the arc. So Indiana's got to tighten up that defense. There was a lot of questions of why wasn't McConnell put on Brunson late, and I think you kind of knew why. McConnell's
Yeah.
like that summertime barbecue gnat. He just doesn't go away,
Oh yeah.
right? So he's, him, Turner, they were having former Sixers, they were having some big buckets last night.
Yeah.
But I thought, first of all, I thought Indiana, if you're going to win a game like that,
Mhm.
then as you alluded to, uh, you have to get, or the series, you have to get that 30 plus pretty much every night. I hate to say it, from Halliburton. You have
Mhm.
to, right?
Yeah.
Siakam's giving you that veteran presence, right around, the free throw line extended. He's good right there. You look at some of their more athletic players that are getting some burn, and I think again, I wouldn't sit there and say, hey, Nesmith or a guy like Turner, they got to give you 30 plus minutes, but that's where they're at right now. Were you shocked that Carlisle didn't go to McConnell late? Van Gundy kept imploring him to make that switch late on Brunson.
Yeah, I mean, McConnell, every time he gets an opportunity, he's making an impact, right? He's that guy. You said his presence is going to be felt. He's figured out a way, despite his lack of size and athleticism, to make a presence on both
Yeah,
ends of the floor, right? Sometimes you have to, the beauty of it, you could to be able to throw different looks at your score at the scorers, right? To frustrate them, give them different looks. McConnell may not be able to stop Brunson the whole night, but at least you give him a different
frustrate him.
look, right? That's all for 5 minute spurts. That's
Right.
the only thing you need to do to probably rest up the other guys who may have to check Brunson. And so
Yep.
McConnell can sort of change the pace up. And I think that's something that they would have to look into maybe a little bit early on. And also Miles Turner, 6 points, not going to get it done, especially
No.
with the front court. OG's out now. Mitchell Robinson's out. All they have is Hartenstein and Precious. Miles Turner should be able to at least give you double digits. And if
You
he's
got to
not,
go right to the basket. You got
you
to go
have
right to
to.
the basket.
You have to. And if he's giving you 6 points the rest of the way, they have no chance.
Yeah.
Siakam and Turner At this point, Halliburton's going to give you what he's going to give you. Siakam had what 14 last night. He has to give you 20, and Miles Turner 6 points is not going to get it done. Like you
Um,
have to be in the double-digit range.
Concern here with the Knicks right now, kind of a walking
Mm-hmm.
mash unit. I mean, this was one of my fears when they hired
Mm-hmm.
Thibodeau. What did I tell you, right? It's
Yeah.
almost like Nick Nurse. He's going to run these guys into the
Yeah.
ground, and it's almost like a war of attrition right now. That's why I thought it was so imperative for them to get that win, because now you force Indiana's hand where, hey, if the Knicks split in Indiana, they go back to MSG up 3-1, and they can
Right.
close out the series.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you keep asking yourself, Julius Randle's out, Mitchell Robinson's out, OG's out. You keep asking how long can this team last? But once again, you have a Miles McBride stepping up. You have a Precious stepping up, 8 points in 20 minutes, 5 rebounds, right? And so the way that they're coached and the way that these guys are internally facing a Pacers team who haven't proven themselves yet to be able to match that toughness and energy that the Knicks have shown us. It may not be too much this round. Now against Boston, I think the talent differential would just be too much to overcome. Like the effort and the grind, get you to a certain point until you can't match the talent of a certain team. And that's where I think they might run into that wall.
But they got to get there first, right? They got to get
Exactly.
there first.
Right. Right.
Brunson already more playoff points for the Knicks than Anthony had, Carmelo Anthony, in 7 seasons. BYP, brought to you by our good friends over at Play It Again Sports, Stepford, New Jersey. Also, fresh roasted coffee. Go to freshroastedcoffee.com. Enter the promo code Back Your Play for 20% off your first purchase. Rich Quinones here. Q Jonathan Marshall, kind enough to join us. I was looking at, from a betting standpoint, you're looking at Boston and Cleveland,
Mm-hmm.
and that game one kind of reeked of a Boston route because Cleveland goes 7 games against the Orlando Magic, and you figure, look, man, they're going to be a shot team. That line's it's moved a little bit here and there. Boston's laying 12 and a half at home, but I just think the big two, and now the emergence of White, that's kind of like the X factor with the Boston Celtics. Like I get the sense, even though Cleveland was able to kind of keep it close going into the half in the locker room, Boston pulled away in the second half. I just have a feeling Boston just runs them off the floor tonight.
I think so. I was at the game the other night, and there were moments where Cleveland's trying to stay in it because of a Donovan Mitchell. He's a great player, right? And so you're going
Yeah.
to be able to be in the game, but it comes down to just the sheer depth that the Celtics have and the versatility on both ends of the floor. I mean, Darius Garland and Mitchell, it's a talented backcourt, but it's a little backcourt. And you have a Derek White, a Drew Holiday, a Tatum, and a Jaylen Brown. They can't match up with that. I mean, you got Max Strus sometimes checking Jaylen Brown. That's easy. Like, that's food for Jaylen
Yeah.
Brown. That's food for Tatum. That's food for Derek White. Darius Garland's not guarding them,
No.
right? So you're not getting enough offense from a Max Strus at that point. You're not getting enough offense. Darius Garland, 14 points. That's not going to get it done for you. Isaac Okoro, you can't rely on him consistently to provide offense. And at this point, Evan Mobley, not having a Porzingis is sort of a wash for the Celtics right now. The Cavs don't
Both
have
ends of the
Jared Allen,
floor. Both
so it
ends of the
really it really doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't mean to cut you off, but both
Yeah,
ends of the floor. Rebound, can block
yeah,
shots, can run the floor, can give you
yeah,
18 to 20.
yeah.
But the funny thing is, you're right, because now all of a sudden you got White stepping up, who's having a
Mm-hmm.
monster series.
Mm-hmm.
Think about some of these games that he's had if you go back to the first round series, but he's averaging 22.
Yeah.
You're getting 22, and if memory serves me correct, I think he's got a plus when he's out on the floor, not a negative. Brown's going to give you your 24. Tatum, we
Mm-hmm.
know, is such an enigma at times, but he's
Yeah.
still a star. I just see them. If Cleveland gets a win, I would be shocked. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
Boston takes the night off here.
Right.
Okay, fine. But I do like the Celtics. We've talked about it. They have to get to
Yeah.
the NBA Finals. They have to win it all. It's boom or bust. Then you have Dallas and OKC, and that's an interesting series.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get to them in a minute, but I have to get to Denver and
Oof.
Minnesota. You mentioned this last year. You said on BYP that you thought Minnesota was a team that was ascending. We talked about it a
Mm-hmm.
little bit in the preseason. We talked about
Mm-hmm.
it as the season started. Is this they've arrived early, or hold on a second, no panic, Denver, they're the defending NBA champs. They still have arguably the best player. Well, we know the best player in the league, MVP and Joker again for the third time
Yeah.
in 4 seasons. Or is this a different, I don't want to say Denver team, but hey, this is a different Minnesota team where tread lightly here because this team's friggin' legit.
You got to give Minnesota their credit. And it all starts with Anthony Edwards. Just his
Big time
transition
player.
to this franchise play. I think he's fully realizing it this year. Like, I am that guy.
Yeah.
And you can see it in that
Yep.
energy. We've seen it from the greats. The other guys feel it with Jalen Brunson with the Knicks. Like, it sort of rallies the other teammates, right? And so you're seeing a Jaden McDaniels, a Naz Reid. I think he's been great for a Karl Anthony Towns, who wasn't meant to be the number one guy on the team, right? Now you have an Anthony Edwards who should be a number one, a franchise guy. Now Cat can sort of fill in his complementary role, right? And
Mm,
see, we're seeing him thrive. And so with Minnesota defensively, I mean, they're locked down. And
mm,
Denver, outside of a Jamal Murray and Nikolai Jokic, what other guys are really putting pressure off the bounce on the defense, right? Michael
yeah.
Porter Jr., obviously, we know he's known for his jumper. Aaron Gordon's a hustle guy. But Minnesota says, look, we're going to put pressure on Jokic and Murray and see what you can do. KCP, can you beat us? Michael Porter Jr., can you beat us? Aaron Gordon, can you beat us? And what they did in the first two games in Denver is shocking. Like
I
I
didn't think they were
still
going to rout him like that. They
I
routed
still
him.
I still thought Denver would enter in this series. I had Denver making the championship, right? But what
We both
Minnesota is
did.
doing, like it's just it's an eye opener. And so we'll see. Game 3 is a must win, obviously, for Denver. I don't want to count them out just yet because you still have to respect the champions from the previous year, and we'll see what happens. But honestly, for the first time last year, Denver's run to the finals really didn't have any.
Hiccups.
Right. And so this is the first time that we're seeing them sort of get knocked down on the canvas. All right, how do you respond? Can you get back up? And so this comes down to me. It comes down to the MVP. You got the award again. What are you going to do? Like to me, he has to go off. He has to set the tone from the jump and say, look, Rudy, Cat, I don't care who you put on me. I'm the best player in the league. That's at this point, it comes down to that. You have to shift the energy because right now they're just embarrassing you. Like the Nuggets are complaining to the refs. They're throwing
Murray.
Jamal Murray should have been suspended, by the way. Another story, but Denver just looked out of sorts. They look like the younger team and not the team with the championship experience and the pedigree. That's
And,
how
and,
bad they've looked.
and by the way, Minnesota did this on the road,
Yep.
right? So they beat them by
Yeah.
7, and then they wax them by, I think, 26.
Yeah.
Edwards had 43, and then Towns comes back with 27. And they play good on the low block. We know
Yeah.
about Gobert. We know about their rim protection. We know about them cleaning up the glass. Now Denver's got to take 2 on the road. But as you alluded to, you have the game's best player. You have another MVP in Joker. You have to basically put the team on your back.
Mhm.
And it's funny. We'll get to the MVP in a moment. We talk about, you have one of the game's best players. I think we
Mhm.
both can agree that when we look at a guy like Luka,
Mhm.
enjoyable, very good player. You look at that series right now, OKC, obviously the more athletic team. We're seeing them running the floor.
Yeah.
But now there's reports coming out, and it's always interesting when, and I don't know if you saw this. So an
Mhm.
anonymous veteran assistant coach
Mhm.
said you can almost sense a quote sigh of relief among Luka Doncic's teammates when he checks out of a game. Quote, it's a sense of, hey, now we can get to play. It's difficult to have any rhythm if you're not touching the ball. End quote. I mean,
Mhm.
that's a loaded quote from an anonymous veteran assistant coach. Is he saying that their offense would run more smoothly if he's out of the game, or is he too much of a selfish player? Does he not trust his teammates? Because when they were winning, it was him and Kyrie, and
Right.
everyone was happy.
Right. Yeah, I don't know who the coach is. Anonymous quotes are kind of funny to me because like
They're
where are you getting
innocuous.
like are you on the sidelines? Are you in that locker room? Are you
Yeah,
gauging this from the TV?
yeah,
Because if you take Luka off the court, the offense is going to be a mess. If you take Luka or Kyrie, you're gonna let Tim Hardaway Jr. guide everything. So Luka and Kyrie, let's not get mistaken, are the reason why you're in this spot.
yeah.
So I don't look, if there's any controversy within that locker room, I mean, at this point, I look, it's Luka he's a ball dominant player, as is Kyrie. We understand this. So if you're a member of this Mavericks team, you have to understand like this is what it is. This is my role. That's what it comes down to. Anytime you're trying to build around a ball dominant guy, we saw with AI in Philly, there
Yep.
were certain players that worked. The Aaron McKees, the Eric Snows. This is what it comes down to. A
Yeah.
ball dominant guy, you got to build a team, especially around him with certain pieces. Jalen Brunson, you got the DiVincenzo's, the Josh Harts of the world. And so that's what it comes down to. But for me, Luka and Kyrie, I would think they would make things so much easier for their teammates,
Yeah,
right? That's
agree.
from my point of view, right? And so I don't know. Well, I mean, it's good enough to be in the second round of the playoffs. You know what I mean? So
Correct.
it's like looking at this roster, you have Luka, you have Kyrie, so you have some nice role pieces, but this isn't like a dominating roster. Like, you
No.
know what I mean? And so yeah, that quote, I'm not going to take it too seriously unless we really see things out there on the court. But once again, as a basketball player, if you have a guy who's dominating the ball, it is, yes, naturally it is going to be hard to get in the rhythm. But once again, that's what it comes down to. Do you have the right pieces around them to understand what their roles are? And I think they do. The PJ Washingtons, the Daniel Gaffords. I think they have the right guys that fit with the Kyrie and Lucas. But yeah, I don't know who this assistant coach is or where he's getting his. I don't know. Is this
No, I
just
hear you. I
his
was just
opinion? Yeah.
sure, sure. And you're right. And that's, sometimes you take it for what it's worth. Want to get to a couple of tweets here. I didn't read them off last week, but Nick is a diehard Hoops fan, loves when Jonathan
Mm.
comes on the show, but he tweeted me earlier today on X and said, Q, what did you think about Carlisle's small market comment? I mean, again, what are we doing here, right? I mean, what
Yeah.
if that's the worst type of crying in the world because you already know you're going to get some calls for
Right.
game three, but is that where we're going now, right now with the small market? I mean, just take the friggin' L, man. Take the
Okay.
L and just move on and make adjustments.
OKC's a small market.
Yes.
Minnesota's a small market.
Memphis, right?
Memphis is a small market. Um, I look, you know, when it comes to blaming the referees, that's when I have to check out. There are some blatant no calls, right? There are some things where it's like, okay, you got that wrong.
Sure.
There's no excuse for that. But from the tip off to the end of the game, there are moments where your team is not executing. There are moments where your team has mental lapses. You can pinpoint those things. That's why when Denver is complaining about the refs, no, Minnesota's just on you. They got you locked up in jail. You can't do nothing about it. The refs can't save you. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And so you control what happens out there on the court.
Yeah.
The Knicks are the more physical team. They play with more effort. And this is what it is. You got to figure out a way to win.
Yeah.
Figure it out. But
Yeah.
blaming the refs for the reason why you're down 0-2, trust me, the refs aren't the reason why you're down 0-2. It's just not.
100%. Steve on X chimes in and he mentions that Q, we told you that Joker's the best player in the league. Now all of a sudden, can Embiid watch some film and realize you can get your ass on the low block. You're never going to become a Joker like player. So Joker, 3 out of the last 4 seasons, wins the MVP. I posted this. So you're talking about some ridiculous, serious company, right? It's
Yeah.
his third MVP in the last 4 seasons, first center in 6 decades to win the MVP 3 times in 4 seasons. And then it was actually, David pointed out to me, let's not forget Moses Malone was
Mm-hmm.
a great player and won it 3 times, I believe. So Joker is the ninth player in NBA history to win at least 3 MVPs, joins Kareem, 6, MJ, 5, Russell, 4, LeBron, 4, and then Wilt, Moses, Bird, and Magic.
Yeah.
And he's right. I mean, we forget how dominant Moses Malone was. But that being said, is this one of those you can give it to Joker every season, or can you have made an argument for insert player?
Well, personally, I thought my guy in OKC, SGA, should have got it because you talk about so much with the narratives around the MVP award, right?
Yeah,
Okay, the Thunder, looking at their roster, talented but unproven, weren't a playoff team last
no,
year. Let's not forget. So you go from not making the playoffs to the number one seed in the Western
57 wins.
Conference,
Yep.
57 wins.
And a
When's the
tough
last time we
Western
seen
Conference, by the
in
way,
a
and a
tough
tough.
Western
Yeah,
Conference
yeah,
with the KDs, with the LeBrons, with the Steph Currys, you know what I mean? With teams that we thought would be up
yep,
there. There was a lot of conversation about the big three in Phoenix and LeBron and AD and Kawhi and James Harden and PG and Zion and New Orleans, right? And Steph. But who's number one?
yeah,
Small market OKC, SGA, Chet Holmgren, who was hurt in his rookie year. He's trying to figure his way into the league. Jalen Williams, who's made improvements, but this roster is still young and improving. But SGA has been the guy to lead the way. He's the one that's really kicking it in a full gear. And we're seeing it now. You sweep the Pelicans, you're playing the Mavs, game one, SGA handled business. And so for me, with the storyline, how great SGA has been, the consistency from the jump, from game one to now, they've been the best team in the Western Conference consistently. And I've been on OKC since the beginning of the year. And so you could see the momentum since last year. And I felt like SGA, with the narrative and what he's been doing for that franchise, I thought he was the MVP. Because if you take him off I mean, you can make the argument, if you take Joker off the floor, it's a different conversation. But if you take SGA off the Thunder, it's a different team as well. Vastly different.
Little housekeeping around the league. So you mentioned Jamal Murray. I mean, again, talking about, refusing to answer questions about throwing his heating pad on the court. That's friggin' weak. I don't know. Is it as weak as Pat Bev thinking that his shit doesn't stink and I'm not going to answer questions because you don't subscribe to my podcast? Like,
that's crazy.
What's worse?
That was wild, the Patrick Beverley thing, but that was on the heels of throwing the ball into the stands twice too. So the fact that I don't subscribe to your podcast, you're not going to answer my questions. Like, nah, like it was weak. It was it was corny, very corny from Pat Bev, and you're not that good. Just be honest, like you're not that good of a player to even have that type of attitude, period. You know what I mean? So it's But Jamal Murray, he threw a towel first, right? Then he doubled down and threw the heating pad on the floor. And so it's like, what if, I think it was Karl Anthony Towns that was near it? What if a player slips on it? You could easily hurt your ankle or hurt your knee, then what? And so what the league does now, you set a precedent, right? So me throwing 2 objects on the floor equals $100,000, right? And so if that happens again, be very careful what the conversation is going to be when it comes to, why didn't you suspend Jamal Murray? Because they were down 0-2. If they were up 2-0, I'm willing to bet the conversation is different. He suspended a game.
Nick Hopper on X says, Q, I saw your tweet about the anti-talking heads in the Knick media. Let them hate. Yeah. Hey, you know what? That's fine. I mean, you got Barkley up there. You got Shaq. You got everyone crushing, the Knicks. You got Kenny Smith talking about it, New York guy. I mean, I don't want to hear this. The NBA wants the Knicks in the Eastern Conference Finals. The NBA is better when the Knicks are good because you're talking about market size. You're talking about hoops heads, hoops fans. You're talking about Madison Square Garden. You're talking about ratings would equal dollars. So all this nonsense, I don't want to hear this crap. How all of a sudden, they're trying to kowtow and dance for the New York Knicks. It's utterly ridiculous, man. Like, you know what? Just they're a good team and they're the cardiac Knicks, and let the hate continue, and that's fine. And if they get to the Eastern Conference Finals and maybe they can win a game or two against the Boston Celtics, maybe the Celtics plane is diverted or delayed when they have to play the Knicks and the Knicks pick up a couple wins, I am still going to enjoy it because remember, what you're doing right now, you build upon that going into the offseason, right? Because for years it was, the Mecca, Madison Square Garden. No, the Knicks franchise was downtrodden. It was horrible. It was so bad. I mean, you know me. I don't need to tell you. I mean, I can go and list some of the starting lineups that they've had over the last 10, 15 years and some of the clowns that they had. So
Jerome James just got off payroll.
Yeah, really? Seriously? Like, I mean, I still going back. I have nightmares. I wake up Charles Smith getting rejected, Reggie Miller, Patrick Ewing missing the bunny. Like, we don't need to go that route. But now you've got blue collar guys. You got a budding star in Brunson. You got a little edge. You got a little chippiness. You got a little nastiness. MSG is rocking. It gives you that 90s feel. It's great for the NBA. And if people don't want to hear it, F them. I don't care. I really don't care.
Yeah, like I said, like, I've over the years, I've given you a hard. Nothing has given me more pleasure than just
you've relished in it.
I relished in the Knicks.
You've
heckled. I troll the Knicks. They're one of the top outside of the Cowboys. I troll the Knicks and the Lakers too because it's just a comedy show out there. But the Knicks have been, for me, I've said it, as much as they've been talked about over the recent years, they haven't won anything.
Nope.
Right, and that's the crazy thing. It's like you look. What was the 70s, right? Clyde Frazier and Bill Bradley,
70,
right?
73. And then they had the great run. They had the late 80s and then the 90s, and they had their runs.
They've had great players, Patrick Ewing, like Carmelo. They had the Insanity run. That was fun, right? But now finally, I can say the hype is worth it because you have a Jalen Brunson. You have a point guard who has proven himself to be, he's a superstar in this league, what he's doing right now.
And you really only have 2 other teams in the Eastern Conference.
I'm saying, like, it's outside of the Celtics. It's been the Celtics and Bucks.
Bucks.
And and then the Sixers are, whatever. But still, outside of that, look, the Cavs, the Magic, the Pacers, the Heat, the Bulls, the Hawks, like, what are we talking about here? Like, these
Mhm.
aren't juggernauts in the Eastern Conference, right? You can interchange the Hawks and Bulls and the Raptors every year.
Yeah.
And so the Knicks are finally having a breakthrough. And you mentioned it. The key is now, how do we, because there's been a lot of one-offs with the Knicks, right? You guys have had a couple of years of success. Then what? So how do you add on to
Sustain it.
this to help
Yep.
Jalen Brunson, to put DiVincenzo and Josh Hart in their proper roles? And then we're really talking, okay, this is a team that can contend with
Right.
the Western Conference team for a championship.
Exactly. When
Yeah.
you're 50 plus and get to the Eastern Conference Finals
Mhm.
next year, then we can start talking. You covering the game tonight?
I won't be there. I'll be there
In spirit?
game, but we'll see. I was there. I was there. We alternate, me and my other
I got you.
guys.
All right.
So
So, all right. Give Jonathan a
so much
follow
going on.
on X at John_Marshall 3, and of course, sports reporter anchor at WMUR. Kind enough to join us on a Thursday edition of Back Your Play with Q. Always appreciate a couple moments, my friend.
Always Q.